Hello. Welcome to another episode of what was this called? To Those Born Rich. So essentially, the idea of these videos is I think that there are a lot of problems that come with being born wealthy, and I don't think anybody's actually talking about those problems. And everyone is kind of just like shitting on people who are born rich, but not telling them how to not be a total piece of shit. So in the last episode, I kind of just talked about, hey, if you're born wealthy, and I'll be honest, most people in America are being born relatively wealthy. I think there's a large, I don't know, it's complicated because there are different levels of being wealthy. Obviously, like, let's say you're in a position where your parents can pay for your college and support you through college. That's a pretty well off situation to be born into, but that's going to be, and there, I think some of the problems with that I'm going to talk about in here are going to arise in that situation. But then there are higher and higher levels of this where you get into people who are born in massive companies and with the opportunity to take over these companies with huge amounts of money to take over or to inherit. People are born with the opportunity to acquire a lot of property. There are people who are born into families that kind of just give them a shit ton of money right off the bat. There are lots of different situations you could fall into. So I'm trying to generalize this as much as I possibly can. But today, I'm talking about the safety net, which I think exists for, honestly, like, I think you saw most millennials kind of fall into this safety net. There's kind of like this trend where like all of the millennials fucking graduated college and then just went and lived at home and didn't really excel, and they kind of got shit on for this, and it wasn't until later in their life that they actually kind of got their shit together. And obviously there's complicated reasons for this. One is because they went into crippling debt going into college. Another is because housing prices got kind of like outrageous post 2008 crash or whatever. I'm no econ or finance guy, but these are just the things that I've heard. So I don't think this is necessarily universally the truth, but I think there is a lot of willingness to kind of take easier routes in life due to having parents that can support you after you graduate college. You can just go back home, live with them, they'll take care of you, you're fucking chilling. And this is not a life you want to live. So, and then this, I think, also extrapolates out to more situations. You have people who, you inherit a lot of money, you have a business that you can go and take over, and so you don't develop certain qualities that are necessary for being a useful member of society, and you don't actually contribute to society. And you'll have a lot of people go off, kind of rely on that safety net. They'll study like some liberal arts degree, or study liberal arts, get a liberal arts degree, and then they'll graduate, and there's nothing they can freaking do with that because obviously there's no money to be made in it. So they go back home, maybe they take over their parents' business, they run it into the ground, and all the employees of that company are totally screwed. And the problem here kind of comes into, or one problem that comes into play here is that parents are too caring in some sense, where it's like, they've got this kid, they want to take care of this kid, but at some point you have to tell your kid like, hey man, you're on your own, you've got to fucking make it in the world. And that sucks as a parent to say, especially when you're afraid that they're gonna fail. But I think generally if parents actually sat down with their kids and said like, I'm gonna stop supporting you at this point, their kids would get their shit together and would maybe start their own businesses, work in companies, get, make a good living, whatever. So how do you deal with the safety net? Because this is a temptation I think we see a lot of people in college fall into, and I think it's why a lot of people my age aren't grabbing life by the balls necessarily. It's definitely something I've struggled with. So first is recognize this as a problem that must be addressed. It's very nice to have a safety net. It's very nice to know that like, oh, if I don't make it in the world, like I'm not gonna starve on the streets. But I think it's I don't think it's productive. And I think generally speaking, people look at that and be like, man, like you're lucky, man. You're lucky you have that. But I think they fail to recognize that the internal game that you have to play in order to overcome this problem is more challenging than one might expect. It's very easy to start to slack off, take easier routes, not invest as thoroughly as you can, not attempt to actually master your craft, just try to be good enough and get by. So the first thing is recognize it's actually a problem. I've seen a lot of people who are born to relatively wealthy positions. They go off and they party a ton, and it's like, man, if they didn't have that safety net, they wouldn't be out partying. They would be like back home working or developing good habits or like getting their shit together, making sure that when they graduate, they are valuable enough to society for society to want to support them, to want to give them a way to create some livelihood. So then the second step is convert this problem perspective into a blessed perspective. The first thing you have to do, you have to recognize it's a problem. You have to be able to sit there and notice like, man, I'm being lazy or I'm fucking off because I feel like I have this safety net. But then the next step is to not use that as a sense of like victimization. I've literally met people who are very wealthy act like, oh, poor me, I have no motivation because I have all of this wealth and so I just have no reason to do anything, so I just party and life is meaningless. And I'm like, dude, what? Like, that's ridiculous. And that's not at all what I'm saying you should do when you see this as a problem. What I'm saying you should do is see this as a problem, see that it's a problem that can be overcome. You can recognize with self-awareness, man, I'm being lazy right now because I'm relying on that safety net. Let's let go of that safety net and take the steps forward that I need to take. And then recognize like having a safety net is a blessing, and it is something that allows you to take extra risks to maybe not deal with certain problems. I mean, it's like you have food and housing taken care of. Like maybe you don't have to have a job while you're going through college, which is the situation I'm in. That doesn't mean like, oh, now take that extra time to go like fuck off. It means like, okay, now take that extra time to go master your craft, get better at what you're good at, or what you're studying, or find new ways to contribute to society, identify problems, theorize solutions, try and build out those solutions. There's something else I was gonna say there. Anyway, appreciate that you have this safety net. In addition to that, in this book, I've been reading Reality Transurfing. It talks about how when you're pursuing a goal, create a safety net. When you're doing anything, create a safety net. If you're on the edge of a cliff or you're walking on a tightrope and you have no harness or you have no safety net below you, you're gonna be like, whoa, this is terrifying, man, holy shit. Or think about if you go rock climbing. If you're like rock climbing, you have no harness, you're gonna be fucking terrified, man. But as soon as you have to have a safety net or a harness, assuming you're not deathly afraid of heights, that inner tension will go away and you'll actually get better at climbing. So when pursuing goals, having a safety net can serve a positive purpose. So look at this safety net as something that makes you more comfortable taking extra risks, that takes this sense of stress off. A lot of people, when they're pursuing goals, have a lot of stress because they have this financial burden that they have to meet. Whereas if you've been born into this financially stable situation or position, then you don't have to worry about financial failure. You can just pursue goals and have an extra level of aggression without that extra level of stress. And when you are stressing, just be like, shit, man, like it's gonna be fine. I have food, housing taken care of. I don't have to worry about these things. So I'm just gonna progress forward and progress forward from a place free of stress. And then you won't be crippled by that. You won't be slowed down by that, hindered by that, blah, 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 blah. A lot of people think that stress is a positive force for productivity. It's not. I think oftentimes we'll encounter stress, and generally it's a crippling force, and some people will grab life by the balls and use it as like a wake-up call to start taking action. But you don't need that stress to be there to start taking action, because as you'll notice, as soon as you start taking action, that stress kind of goes away. So that stress isn't that driving force, it's just that force that creates that awareness. But if you're just strategic and rational, you're able to kind of assess a situation and say like, okay, this is my situation. I want this. I'm just going to do the things that get me this. Be willing to let it go. Don't be a slave to your safety net. I've also met people where it's like all of the decisions that they make are basically surrounding like making sure they get that inheritance, making sure they can take over their parents' company, making sure they don't lose the financially beneficial situation that they were born into. And that's not a good way to live your life. It's defensive, it's not open, and it's not free. You're not free to explore the world. You're not free to find what you're good at and contribute in a way that's meaningful and unique to you. You just become a slave to your wealth. You become a slave to this thing that you were born with, and you live in this fearful state. That is not ideal. So free yourself from that. Don't be a slave to that. Be willing to live a normal life. Be willing to come, out of your ivory tower down to the masses, and shit, man, if you gotta like get a construction job to support yourself, like get a construction job to support yourself. If your family is unhealthy and unwell and they're not a positive influence on you, don't stay in that situation just because you don't want to lose your money. These things are not healthy. These things are not good. That's basically my main ideas, my main points. 11 minutes, I'd say that's a good length for a video. Give me thoughts, ideas, opinions. That's the safety net, folks. Be grateful for it. Don't be used by it. Don't be its slave. Be capable of taking advantage of it in the ways that you can. Don't allow the knowledge of that safety net to make you lazy, but instead use the knowledge of that safety net to allow you to progress from a stress-free position. Good luck, people.